Welcome back to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. You can subscribe to all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make your tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We are recording this episode on Wednesday, March 13th, and joining me as always, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, I want to talk to you about Zillow's most recent update on the state of the housing industry, the housing market report for February 2024. Skylar Olson published this on March 11th. She's a Zillow staffer. Just let me read the lead to this story for you. A substantial infusion of new inventory to the market is welcome news for buyers on the hunt for their next home this spring, and more evidence that the effects of quote-unquote rate lock are starting to weaken. New listings of existing homes on Zillow are up 21% in February compared with last year and rose 20% from January. This begs the question, what is going on in the housing market right now? And with rates still hanging out between, I don't know, I haven't looked recently, 6.5% to 7%. Depending on, what.
Depending on the latest economic data comes out, right? We get massive swings in mortgage rates.
But who's buying? I mean, that's really the question. I mean, and I'll ask you one other question. Who's buying, number one? And two, what are they buying?
First of all, let me just say that the housing market was supply constrained in 2023. Yes, demand had fallen from the peak in 21, but supply fell even more. And so, we had the flow of existing homes coming on the market kind of pulling back quite a bit. Remember, people with low mortgage rates didn't want to sell last year, right? And so you basically had this supply constrained housing market. What we're seeing now is all of a sudden, despite higher mortgage rates, sellers are coming back, right? They may have a 4% mortgage rate or a 5% mortgage rate. And we're like, well, why would someone get rid of that low mortgage rate and come back in the housing market and put their home up for sale right now, right? Mm-hmm. But that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing an increase in new listings, 21% higher than last year. And, especially in like Florida and Texas markets. And so that's really wondering like what's going on. I guess part of it could be like regions that built a lot during the pandemic. Well, guess what? A new construction home eventually becomes resale inventory, right? You move in, you live in it for a couple of years, you decide to sell. Okay, so places that build a lot might have a lot more resale inventory, resale homes coming on the market. There's also the fact that people, face life events, right? Marriage, divorce, having a new kid, and maybe you're like, you know what? I stuck it out in this house, but my family has grown quite a bit. I need to move regardless of where mortgage rates are because ultimately they're probably not coming down, right? And so we have a lot of that going on probably. The other thing is Zillow data shows that 70% of sellers end up buying again. So going to your question about who's buying, well, if you have more sellers, you're going to have more buyers, right?
Sure.
That's also the other thing. But our data also shows that the share of home buyers who were first-time home buyers has actually increased to 50% from 40 in 2023. That was last year, right? So likely continuing into the first quarter of 2024, an increase in the share of first-time home buyers. Why did we see an increase in the share of first-time home buyers? Well, if you didn't have a lot of homeowners selling their homes, you're probably going to have a larger share of first-time home buyers in the market. The other thing that we're learning is, first, these buyers are higher income, much higher income than the typical household. The household income of buyers in 2023 was $97,000, up from $86,000 the year before. And the U.S. median household income is roughly $75,000. So you could see that people who are out there in the housing market today have much higher incomes than kind of the median household income across the country, the typical household. The credit quality of these buyers is through the roof. According to the New York Fed Household Debt and Credit Report, the median credit score for a newly originated mortgage was 770, right? 770. Just think about that. Before the global financial crisis, credit scores were way below that. We're looking at like top 500s, low 600s. Okay. The credit score of buyers today is the highest. It's almost the highest it's ever been. So you have high income, high credit buyers in the housing market today that are actually going out there and buying. The other thing that you'll notice is that when interest rates go up like they have, the monthly mortgage cost goes up. And in order to keep your monthly mortgage payment really low, what you need is a much bigger down payment. Mm-hmm. And guess what? We're actually seeing that in the data. Buyers today are coming up with much higher down payments.
From a percentage standpoint, what are you talking about in terms of this wave of buyers?
Let's just put it this way: 52% of buyers have put down more than 20%.
Well, that tracks. I mean, especially if they're second homes, right? Because on the second home, I mean, at the minimum that most lenders are asking for is 25% down.
Remember, they're not second homes because we said the share of first-time home buyers has increased.
Right on.
Right?
Yeah, that's
so they're not second homes.
That's very interesting.
Exactly. And guess what? Zillow has all the answers when it comes to the housing market. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased and I do a lot of work with Zillow. Here's the thing. We have the answers. And how do we know? What are people doing? They're getting their money from the bank of mom and dad.
Oh, okay.
They're co-buying. We see an increase in the share of co-buyers. People are buying. 62% of buyers bought with at least one other person. And by the way, it's not just your spouse, right? It's family and relatives, friends even, that are buying homes together to make the math work. I thought that was fascinating. We also see an increase in the share of buyers who decide to, quote unquote, house hack. They're basically like, hey, I got the space. I'm going to rent out an extra room. I got to rent out the basement in order to cover my monthly cost, right? And so those are all the things that are really happening in the housing market today. And I think to address your last question, what are people buying? Well, in bulk, they're still buying a single family detached house, but the share of houses that are townhomes and condos has increased.
Is that a consequence of the new building and the wave in new building?
It's a consequence of the affordability, right? As affordability got stretched, builders started building smaller, taller, more townhomes and condos, attached single-family homes, as opposed to detached single-family homes. So you see that trend, right? That change. Buyers also want, right? They rank their budget first because affordability is a big issue. But they want everything. They want to be in walkable neighborhoods with access to shops and services. They rank those as highly important. And of course, the South is building the most housing, so people are moving south. So that kind of sums up what we're seeing in the housing market in terms of who's buying out there and what they're buying.
Well, I appreciate it as always, Dr. Orphe Divounguy. This has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other high-quality podcasts at americastalking.com.
He ran for state office and was beaten. Started a business and failed. Ran for Congress and lost. But thankfully, Abraham Lincoln didn't give up. Persistence. Pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.